Welcome to Real Truth Real Quick. My name is Rick Smith. I'm here with Todd Wagner.
Hello, buddy.
Well, hey, we're shooting this in 2015, and there has been sort of a controversy, I guess you could say, around the Confederate flag. So the question goes like this: what is a Christian's response to the Confederate flag controversy?
That is a tremendous way to phrase it. We're doing Real Truth Real Quick, and so what we're trying to do is give a biblical worldview and a scripture-informed response to life, leadership in the world we live in. So the world we live in says that South Carolina should not fly the state flag over its capital. The world we live in says that you shouldn't sell the Confederate flag on Amazon. Okay? So let's talk about how a Christian responds to this idea. First of all, we're talking a lot about, I hear a lot of people talking about their rights. That I have a right to buy that flag, to fly that flag. And what I would say as a believer is that whenever we start with asserting our rights, we're a little bit out of step with what God would have us do. We're to do nothing from selfishness or empty conceit, but with humility of mind, consider others as more important than ourselves. But let me just say a few things about the whole Confederate flag and what it means to some people and what it means to others. There is no question. What really got this whole controversy going is we had a young man who was mentally ill, at the very least, who walked into a church in Charleston, South Carolina, who embraced the Confederate flag as one of the symbols that he wanted to identify with, and that in a way that is only described as pure evil, just shot 9 people, apparently simply for their color. And that's inexcusable. Now, the fact that that guy identified with the Confederate flag in and of itself does not make the Confederate flag evil. And in the same way that Adolf Hitler, who embraced a lot of what Martin Luther said, or just the simple cross of Jesus Christ, doesn't make the cross of Jesus Christ evil. Adolf Hitler was evil. Adolf Hitler was a madman. But we don't want to get rid of the cross just because Hitler identified with it in some of his symbolism. All right? What I would say to you as a believer is when you speak, it's not a matter of whether or not you have a right to say something. We are compelled by Scripture. Ephesians 4:29, let no unwholesome word proceed from your mouth, but only such a word that is good for edification, which means to build up others, according to the need of the moment, that it might give grace to those who hear it. And so even though I'm free to say things a certain way, I have a responsibility towards you to say it in a way that's going to give you grace. I have a right, if I want to put a Confederate flag patch on my jeans or a flag on the wall, but I want to ask myself, is that going to serve other people? Okay? And if not, then I'm going to say, I don't really care about my right to fly the flag, because I love you more than my right to fly the flag, even if it just represents noble people who believe states should have individual rights. Just like many Christians are arguing today that the federal government should impose upon us gay marriage, okay? And so some people would say, yes, states should decide that issue. There were people who, I wouldn't support the idea of slavery. I think it was an offense to God and in every way an unbiblical position, even though some people hid behind scriptures, wrongly interpreted that slavery was talked about in Scripture when the slavery in Scripture had nothing to do with slavery as was wrongly propagated in the South. Okay, Colossians 4:6 says, let your speech always be with grace, as though seasoned with salt. Okay, because we want to know how to respond to each person. That's Colossians 4:6. The Bible does tell us what to do in what I would call issues of conscience. And specifically, Rick, in 1 Corinthians 8, okay, it talks about meat sacrificed to idols and whether or not I can eat it. Paul says, if you want to know the truth, I don't think there is such a thing as an idol. And so for me to eat meat that's been sacrificed to idols is not a problem for me. But he says, don't use your liberty to cause an offense to another person. And that, frankly, is to me the overriding way I would respond to Christians who say, we've got a right to fly the Confederate flag. It doesn't mean I support slavery if I do that. I would say, you know what? But to other people it might. And so why don't you lay down your right to fly the Confederate flag? Okay? One of the problems, though, in our country is that we don't really seek to understand. We don't walk up to somebody who might have a Confederate flag on the wall who believes that it represents a fight for a constitutional interpretation, but to them it represents racism and abuse of fellow man. What I would do is just say, hey man, a fool does not delight in understanding, but only in revealing his own mind. So the mature thing to do when you see somebody who has a Confederate flag is go, hey man, tell me what that means to you, okay? And if that person expresses bigoted views and intolerant views or racist views, then I would lovingly address that, okay? But I would tell you, it's become an issue that for me or for anybody else that wants to say, I've got a right to fly the flag, so I'm good, I don't think you can defend that position with Scripture. Okay? And so while there were some in the South that said the Confederate flag did not represent to them being pro-slavery, there is no question that that's what many people interpret it as today. What I would say is, even if it doesn't to you, what do you care more about? Your relationship with that person, or your right to fly a flag that represents your heritage, which doesn't represent in your mind racism?
Good stuff. All right. Well, hey, listen, if you have any questions, comments, leave them in the comments below. And you can check out our archives at realtruthrealquick.com. And we'll see you next week on another episode.